We're redoubling our efforts to not only recover from the incredible destruction from last week's events, but to prepare and respond to the significant weather lining up through the next week. There are 3 big pulses of storms arriving with increasing intensity. The one we're seeing now, another over the weekend, and the biggest hitting around Tuesday. Environment Canada will continue to update the forecast, but the time to prepare is now. And for people to pay attention and be ready for the unpredictable weather that is coming to BC's coastal areas and the Lower Mainland. I urge all British Columbians to be extremely vigilant. Keep a close eye on weather alerts for your area from Environment Canada. Check regularly for updates, warnings, and alerts from local governments and First Nation authorities. If you're able, storm-proof your homes. At the very least, clear gutters and drainages. Make sure your emergency supplies include drinking water stored in an accessible place. And if you don't need to travel during stormy weather, please stay home. And if you are required to drive, please make sure your vehicle has food, water, warm clothes, blankets, and other emergency supplies. If you're in a flood-prone area, be prepared to evacuate if asked. I encourage everyone to take some time now to put together or refresh their emergency kits. Prepared BC has lots of great information to help you to get ready. I want to take a moment to again talk about the human side of this disaster. I want to offer my deepest condolences for the families who've lost loved ones. Thousands have been forced from their homes and properties, and they're all struggling with the stress, uncertainties, and loss. And for those who are returning to flooded homes, fighting through the heartbreaking task of dealing with the destruction left behind, we understand how difficult this can be. If you're evacuated or affected by flooding and need support, please contact your local designated reception centre or emergency support services. And as I mentioned yesterday, we've set up a Service BC contact centre line where people can speak with an agent and get information related to floods 7 days a week. The toll-free number is 1-833-376-2452. As we face these challenges together, be assured that the public service and thousands of workers, emergency workers, soldiers, first responders, volunteers, transport drivers, railroaders, and all levels of government, and so many more, are working on responding and recovering from this disaster and preparing for the expected storms ahead. Road maintenance contractors and crews with more than 250 pieces of heavy equipment are ready to go to where they're needed. More than 350 culverts have been inspected, and the Armed Forces is supporting any necessary repairs. We have work crews and boots on the ground. Helicopters and airplanes flying missions all over the affected areas, helping, assessing, and delivering food. We also have a contingent of emergency workers from Alberta who've come to help. And as you heard yesterday, we're working hard on a new BC flood strategy, and will continue to invest in hundreds of flood mitigation projects. We're focused on supporting people and communities through this emergency, and we will continue to support hundreds of First Nations and local governments in this response and in developing flood risk reduction projects for the future. Lastly, I want to take a moment to recognize the role of the media in taking weather forecast data and making it real and immediate for people across the province. And to all British Columbians, remember to be vigilant, prepared, and calm, and we'll all get through this. It will take a lot of work, but we will get through this. We will come out of this stronger than ever, and we will be a more resilient province. Thank you, and I'll turn this update over to Minister Osborne.
Thank you, Minister Farnworth, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to start also by acknowledging the territory of the Lekwungen people of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and also to begin by acknowledging the incredible hardship that communities and people have faced over the past week. I express my condolences to the families of the British Columbians who have lost loved ones, and I want to assure people in all communities impacted by floods and mudslides that we are here for you. We're working non-stop to open up transit corridors to keep supplies moving, providing financial support to individuals and families through the Red Cross, and setting up the Service BC flood response line for people impacted by this disaster. Our government is working to support you. I also want to thank local governments, First Nations, communities, first responders, Canadian Forces, highway patrols, and the many, many volunteers who've been working around the clock to keep people safe and protected. As the former mayor of Tofino, I understand the challenges that are faced when responding to emergencies. It's rare that we have to respond to disasters like this, both in the number and in the scale that we have seen lately. And we know that these shifts are due to global climate change. I want to acknowledge every local elected official and each one of their staff in these impacted communities. They are all working tirelessly alongside provincial agencies, and they've shown simply heroic dedication to the people in their communities, working literally to fight the storm in an effort to save people, to save homes, and to save livelihoods. Communities that just a few months ago were working with the province to battle wildfires are again rallying to support each other. And just the way that people come together to help one another, communities are coming together to help one another. Kelowna and Kamloops have both sent in crews to help Merritt get its water and sewage systems back up and running full speed and help with other urgent needs. And I am so moved and inspired by the generosity, the strength, and the resiliency that is shown by communities and people during this time. Since the floods began, my staff and I have been in direct contact daily with local governments in impacted communities. Last week, my colleagues Minister Farnworth, Minister Fleming, and Minister Popham joined me for regional calls with all the mayors, regional district chairs, and city managers at local governments across BC to hear their concerns, to share information with them, and to answer their questions. And this past week, my staff held additional calls to provide information and answer questions about the provincial state of emergency. And as I said, staff are in daily contact with the communities that are impacted, working in collaboration with other ministries to coordinate responses so that communities don't have to reach out to several ministries to get the answers that they need. We're hearing incredible gratitude for the work that people at Emergency Management BC are doing to support communities, and we're hearing specific concerns based on local expertise that we are acting on. We're also hearing a shared interest in building back better to make communities more resilient to climate change and these kinds of disasters in the future. What I've told local governments, and will repeat here now, is that nobody expects communities to do this alone. Supporting recovery, rebuilding infrastructure, and maintaining community services will require coordination and engagement from all orders of government. My ministry and I are working alongside our government colleagues and with our federal partners to ensure that BC communities impacted by flooding and mudslides get the support they need. That includes the commitment of our government and the federal government to be there as partners with financial support for rebuilding community infrastructure as we recover. And as we have those larger conversations about rebuilding and recovery, emergency financial supports are in place for local government to meet immediate infrastructure needs. Local governments impacted by flooding are eligible for financial assistance through the Provincial Disaster Financial Assistance Program, and that includes coverage for things like rebuilding or replacing essential public infrastructure, replacing essential materials, and cleanup and debris removal. That funding is available now, and communities are already applying. The Municipal Finance Authority of BC has also offered to help local governments to meet any immediate cash flow needs as they access disaster assistance funding, and that will ensure that they can get the rebuilding work done as quickly as possible. So I encourage all communities to reach out to the MFA should they need that assistance. And while these programs are supporting the many urgent community needs that we see, I want to be clear. I am committed to working with our federal partners to respond to the longer-term financial need of communities as they work to rebuild the public infrastructure that the people in their communities depend on. As my colleagues here have said a number of times during the past week, these extreme weather events are likely to be more frequent in the future. Climate change means that we will need to continue adapting how we plan and prepare for natural disasters, ensuring that community infrastructure is built to withstand future events. Not just transportation routes, but local facilities like water and wastewater treatment plants. That's what we'll do. The events of the past year and a half have proven our ability to work together in addressing challenges like these: the pandemic, the heat dome, wildfires, and now flooding. These are significant events individually, but together they've had catastrophic impacts on people and communities that would have been unimaginable even 10 years ago. The early days of the pandemic have shown us that when all orders of government work together to support people in communities, we can accomplish much, so much for the people that we serve. And this is another opportunity to do that. Thank you. I will pass it over to Minister Fleming.
Thank you very much, Minister Osborne, and good afternoon. I would like to begin the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure update today with an update on Highway 1 in the Sumas area. We've had geotechnical engineers confirm that the road is safe for travel, and it will open at 2 o'clock this afternoon. This will provide a lot of welcome congestion relief and mobility for the region, and I want to thank people for their patience over the past several days. However, I want to emphasize that while having the main artery open through the Fraser Valley is good news, it will not be travel as normal. Rather, it will be slow going with reduced speed limits, and people will, again, ask to be patient. Highway 1 will not be subject to a travel order. It will be available for general travel, but we are asking people to consider whether their travel is absolutely necessary. And a reminder that many of these temporary fixes are to get people in the region moving once again, and we'll be watching the road closely, particularly in light of the rain that is falling now, with more in the forecast. We hope and expect that Highway 1 will be able to remain open, but we will be constantly monitoring its performance, and if necessary, we may have to close the highway again, because safety is always our first priority. But with that caution, this is definitely good news. As we continue to reopen our highways, so we reopen our supply chains and reconnect our communities. Opening Highway 1 will help relieve the congestion that we've seen on Highway 7. Travel restrictions will remain in place on Highway 7, though, for the time being. We'll update later on that. But Highway 7 has been deemed essential for the movement of goods and services, and will continue to be for the near future. I want to move to the Coquihalla and make some remarks about some of the thinking around temporary repairs of a very significant provincial highway. We've all seen the images. The Coquihalla was heavily damaged by the deluge of these historical rains. All told, about 20 sites have been damaged or washed away, and that is about 130 kilometers of the corridor that is affected. This includes 5 bridges where spans completely collapsed or were otherwise heavily damaged, and this is going to be a daunting task to get that highway back to being fully operational, but I'm pleased to report that the work has begun right now. We have over 100 pieces of equipment working around the clock to restore temporary access as quickly as possible. We are currently blasting rock at 3 sites. We are mobilizing equipment to another 2 sites. We have completed the cleanup at 2 large debris flow sites on the Coquihalla as well. As it relates to site-specific updates along the Coquihalla, moving from north from Hope to Merritt, at the Jessica Bridge, we are currently installing a temporary bridge while we demolish the span that collapsed. At the Carolyn Bridge, construction access has been built. At the Bottletop Bridge, we are working on installing a temporary access bridge to get crews across while we demolish the collapsed span there. At the Brodie Bridge, we're working to protect the abutments there. At the Murray Flats, we're currently rebuilding lanes at 4 different sites, and we're also conducting on the Coquihalla in-river work. This is happening at many sites to prevent further erosion and to properly channel the water back under the main spans. In terms of timelines, we're reasonably optimistic that enough temporary repairs can be completed to allow commercial traffic on the corridor in about 2 months' time, by late January. But with that, I do have to caution that the weather will be a factor and a key consideration in determining whether we can reach that target. When we do open up, obviously, like other highways that have been impacted, it won't be business as usual on the Coquihalla. There will be 2 segments, each 20 to 30 kilometers in length, where the highway will have to have reduced speeds and only one lane in each direction will be possible. I suppose if there's something fortunate about the Coquihalla damage, it is that the areas that experienced the most challenging winter conditions were not as impacted, and we will have the same road standard as before the storms. This includes Snowshed Hill and across the Coquihalla Summit, as well as Larson Hill and the segment from Larson Hill to Merritt. We'll be providing a lot more information about what drivers can expect along the corridor as we continue to work to fix and remediate Highway 5 and as we finalize some of the work plans that are being contemplated right now. Let me just say in closing that we've never seen anything like this in BC in terms of how many highways have been impacted all at once. We have 200 sites across the South Coast and interior that were impacted. Some of these highways are vital for the movement of essential goods, but all of them are vital for the people who live and travel in those areas. And I can't thank enough the crews who've been working flat out in the rain, in the weather, making immediate repairs to get people moving again. The stories of what those contractors have been able to accomplish working with Ministry of Transportation staff is nothing short of incredible. And I want to acknowledge the challenges of those who are living in areas where restoring highway access is going to take many, many months simply because the damage has been so severe. And this includes Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon. It includes Highway 8. We will move as quickly as possible to restore access for all those affected. We will provide updates as plans progress, and we will continue, of course, to update you on the status of our highways, but I also encourage everyone to consult and visit Drive BC for the latest information on highway conditions and on highways that are open, and I would now ask Minister Popham to provide her update.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us. We have started to get reports on impacts that the flood has had on other crops and commodities in the agriculture sector in the valley. We have about 57 blueberry producers that have been affected, about 2,100 acres of blueberries. We've got about 82 acres of raspberries that have also been impacted. Both of these types of commodities will need to be ripped out and replanted. Many of them are still underwater. We have field crops, approximately 420 acres that were unharvested at the time of the flood, and now they are lost. This is 4,000 tons of stored and unharvested field vegetables that are most likely damaged and lost. Most of these were on the Sumas Prairie or in Fort Langley. Some farms are still able to salvage some of their crops, and we congratulate them for trying to get that food into the food supply right now. It's a tough job. But cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, carrots, and leeks have been significantly impacted. We've got two major flower growers that are under several feet of water. This is about 250,000 plants that are lost in nurseries. About 100% of bulb growers in the Sumas Flats have been impacted. We also have two land-based fish farms in the Fraser Valley that have been impacted. The losses haven't been entered yet, but we believe that all fish are presumed lost. These are tilapia and barramundi fish. We also have, unfortunately, a commercial Chinook hatchery on Vancouver Island that also has been damaged due to the flood. Avtar Dillon and his brother have a 25-acre farm in Abbotsford. You might have been hearing about them recently. They're the folks that have the saffron farm. They've been in the news because they've been growing about 250,000 saffron crocus bulbs. They've tried for the last 5 years to find a method to get it just right, and they were in the news a month ago because they were showing success, and this was going to be their first year. Unfortunately, that's all underwater now, and our hearts are with them. It's devastating. We are closely working with local governments, of course, and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency around the task of disposing and removing animal carcasses lost in the flood. But I'm going to take this moment to talk about a very difficult issue for our producers. There's been a lot of interest by folks around understanding the impacts to the livestock sector. There's been a lot of interest in the numbers and the totals, and I get that. But I think right now it's important to understand that this curiosity that we have about reporting out daily on deceased animals is impacting our livestock producers negatively. Each time we update those numbers, it turns out to be another traumatic moment for our livestock producers. And to tell you the truth, they don't really want to go there right now. They're still in the emergency and dealing with these events. And what the producers are telling me is that they want to focus on the positive moments that are keeping them going. So I won't be updating the animal mortality totals over the next few days out of respect for the livestock producers. They're hurting very deeply, and I appeal to your compassionate side as you address this issue as well. Gary Bars is a dairy farmer in the valley, and he started moving dairy cattle out on Tuesday and continued to do that. He was able to move approximately 2,000 cows with his truck and his trailer. And today he continues to relocate animals back to their home barns as the water has been receding. I talked to him this morning, and he has conveyed the message to me that yes, he has seen some very heartbreaking situations, but he is amazed by the generosity of British Columbians and the donations that are coming in and the positive messages. And so that's what is keeping him going. And so I think that's what we need to keep doing. We're seeing increased access for farmers to get back to their farms so they can assess the damage, and increase access for feed and water to animals in need is also on the rise. We saw another airdrop to a hog farm of grain yesterday, so that's good news. We've seen permits for re-entry that were issued yesterday. This included livestock feed deliveries, hay deliveries, mushroom hauling, chicken hauling, egg pickup, vet access, and equipment servicing. These access arrangements are definitely helping secure our supply chain right now. Our ministry staff are supporting ongoing livestock relocations, and right now we're working on a process to support feed and housing costs for relocating these herds. About 20 herds were relocated from the Sumas Prairie, and many relocations are happening around other flood-affected areas in the province. We're working with the BC Dairy Association and the BC Cattlemen's to ensure that herds are being looked after. And in fact, we are having a meeting tonight at 7 o'clock with the BC Cattlemen's to just talk about the issues at hand. The relocation process is a difficult process. It's very physical work, and also we're dealing with animals that are under a lot of stress, and so the work there is difficult, and I just thank the people that are committed to doing that right now. We're working collaboratively to address the issue of feed in the areas of the Nicola Valley. Ranchers and small lot farms, particularly in Merritt, have sustained huge feed losses. The BC Horse Council and the Nicola Valley Rodeo Association are two of the groups that are helping to support the efforts there, and they're doing a great job. There's ongoing planning to identify hay storage options, and the BC Forage Council is helping us manage this, so thanks to them as well. To wrap up today, I'm just going to leave you with a short story about a chicken farmer by the name of Dave Martins and his family. Dave Martins was located right in the middle of the flood areas, and his family, they've lost everything. They've lost their home, they've lost their barns, and over this past week, along with a long list of other farmers, I've sent Dave a message and he's responded back. Sometimes it's just a good night, sometimes it's just a good morning, but he's been sending me photos of a fire hydrant where he's been relocated to. Outside of that home is a fire hydrant that shows the levels of the water receding. Yesterday he sent me a photo of that fire hydrant and all the water had receded around. But he sent me a picture this morning, and it's a pile of stuff that he and his wife grabbed as they rushed out of their place. And in that pile of stuff was a wall hanging, and it's the word hope. He texted me that he walked by that pile of stuff this morning, and he said to himself, "No kidding, Dave, that's my glimmer of hope." So if Dave and his family can feel hope at this time, it's a reminder to all of us that we will get there if we stick together, and we will rebuild. Thank you.